This episode of Instant Analysis is brought to you by Platinum Storage Group and Real Estate Investments. For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber for Instant Analysis of Day 23 of the Todd McNair NCAA trial. And today was a roller coaster of a day. I'm going to start with the biggest news, the end of the day, and work back forward because it's just been that much of a day.
I don't want to jump in there. The biggest news is we're still here.
Yes.
Go ahead.
The biggest news is that we still don't have a verdict and we're still here. But so one of the jurors on the jury has been excused. Alternate one is now filling in for that role. The juror that was excused felt like her English capabilities were not enough to understand the detailed parts of the cases. She didn't feel comfortable voting, and it seems like she was maybe one of the 4 out of the 8-4 in the deadlock. So we're on day 1 of deliberations, even though it's technically day 4 because they have to start over. But where we ended up today is not where we thought we'd end up in the morning of today.
No, and as the day went on, we thought this might be right now day 0 because we thought after 2 o'clock, as Judge Schaller said, he may be going to have to pull the ripcord on this thing and declare the mistrial and move on and say, you know, you guys tried, but we couldn't get it done, and we're going to have to come back and do this whole thing all over again. We're not quite there yet. We only have to do the deliberations over again from the beginning, even though the alternate was in the jury for the in the jury room. I mean, not in the jury room, was in the jury box for the trial, but not allowed in the jury room at all. So they basically tell the jurors, you start over, you forget all the deliberations that went on. You do not treat this person as a substitute or as a newcomer. They're a fully participating juror, a full deliberations person, not an observer.
I knew you were going to go there.
With no ability to participate in the deliberations. It's a different world here with the actual court system as opposed to that other system that we're dealing with as well.
Well, let's start with the beginning of the day, how we got here. So first, we had an inkling that there was going to be a jury question right off the bat of the day. So we got that question 20 minutes into the day, and it said a note. One of the juror who was excused gave a note to the jury foreman, and the jury foreman then gave that note to Judge Schaller. The note said, I don't feel capable about my English abilities. I don't think I'm understanding the full details of the case, and the reason why the deliberations are taking so long is because it's taking a long time for me to understand. So then that caused deliberation among the attorneys. We actually took a 15-minute break so they could understand what to do with it. Where did it go from there?
Well, to say about juror number 3, I think she's a smart person. I think she's, she knows what she wants to do. She knows her mind. I don't think, like most people, she understood where this case was going and how much of this case depended on understanding, the written word out of hundreds of emails that were, projected onto the screen, out of reading bylaws in the NCAA manual. Of listening to hours and hours of video depositions where, a little nuance of an expression here or there really mattered. And this was in a place, I think, she admitted she wasn't capable of doing the job. But I think she tried. I think, I think she was right when she said, let me go. And they didn't let her go. And so the last thing, we sing in the morning is Judge, Schaller coming out and saying she's going to stay, and she answered.
Because they took her into the judge's chambers, and they asked her a couple questions to see, because what the NCAA presented was, is this a case where she is completely unable to understand the English language to even understand the case, or is this just a case of she takes a little bit longer to understand, but she does understand the case? And I think what they figured out was she does understand the case, but it just takes a little bit longer.
Right. I don't think there's any, question about her, mental capacities or any of that. I think she's, a smart person. But she answered those questions. So they said, well, we'll go through, to lunchtime, take a break. We'll come back at 1:30. But in finding that they had another vote and they had a deadlock, they were still 8-4. And I do think when the presiding juror, and you made this point, and you were right on it, I think, he made the point that they were 8-4 on question number 3, but he also said they were 8-4 on, they would have been 8-4 on the next question. And I think you made the right conclusion with the fact that that would tell you that the 8-4 was in Todd's favor, because they would not, if it was not in his favor, they would have never gone on to question 4. So I think that gave some, insight into the fact that this is 8-4 in Todd's favor, which I think really matters. I think we have a sense of that now. I think until we heard that from the presiding juror, I don't think we would have necessarily known that. We could have said, well, I think it probably, but I think that kind of tells you that that's where it is. It was 8-4 in Todd's favor.
Yeah, but the interesting part about what happened afterwards, they sent her back into the deliberation room. 15 minutes later, we get another buzz, another question. They're deadlocked again. So coming back from lunch, Scott Carr, one of Todd McNair's attorneys, said, well, we kind of are concerned that if she said that it takes her a long time to understand the details of the case, why are they now deadlocked 15 minutes later? Why are they even taking a ballot 15 minutes later? So he was presenting that concern as, is she going to be capable to actually fully participate? And right as that was happening, we get another buzz. Yeah, another buzz. And Judge Schaller said he's never had so many questions in a case before.
I think he said, I don't know if I've had this many. What is it, 5 or 6? It's 6.
Yeah.
6 questions. He said this may break the record for questions in a case. And the buzz was almost perfectly timed, because everybody says, okay, Scott Carr has just made his point about whether, she can be gotten up to speed. And here comes the question, and they immediately copy the question so that all the attorneys have it. And Scott Carr looks at it and said, wow, this may be our answer, something like that. And it was a request for a translator for that juror. And I think that made the point that, we don't need to talk about this anymore. We don't need to argue about it anymore. We just figure out how to do it, how to say it, and what exactly we do according to California law to substitute a juror. I think that made the decision fairly easy.
Yeah, well, they said in their note that they couldn't have meaningful dialogue about the case, which is extremely important in this case. So they actually brought out the foreman of the jury, had him come into the jury chambers. They discussed with him for a while, and then sent him back to the deliberation room. And then the two attorneys, they talked about it for a while with Judge Schaller. Then Judge Schaller came out. I believe it's the Casey instruction 5014, where they excused the juror. Alternate 1 became the new juror number 3, and now we are on day 1 of deliberations in the trial, because, like we said earlier, they had to do it all over again. So
it is hard to keep track of the day. It's week 5. It's day 23.
Yep.
It's day 4 if you're counting all deliberations. It's day 1 or half or whatever if you're just counting the new deliberations. So if you're keeping score at home, you probably need to really check your scorebook, because we're sometimes having trouble ourselves keeping up with the numbers.
Yeah, but that means, though, that it's definitely, I think, if you're Todd McNair, that's a positive sign. We all pretty much thought we were going to have a mistrial at 2, and now we essentially have new deliberations right now. Friday, tomorrow, will be an early day. It will end at noon, because one of the jurors has a prior obligation that they actually told during the jury selection process, oh, well, I have an obligation on Friday, and all sides said, oh, well, it won't go till Friday.
Friday, May 18th, and they said, May 18th, this trial's starting on April 18th. You got no problems.
Yeah.
So, and Judge Schaller is scheduled for some kind of a seminar, legal training kind of a day as well. So both of them, with things to do tomorrow, and nobody thought it would get to this point, and here we are just starting over.
Mm-hmm. I think this definitely taught us not to read the tea leaves. You can't tell where this is going to go. You can't tell what the jury is going to decide. But I'm going to contradict myself and say, where do we go from here? Where do we go next?
Well, I think, as much as they say, start over and all of that, the fact that they've gone through those first 2 questions, which were 12-0 votes, I don't know that it'll take as long to get going for that. And they'll know kind of where they were on question 3, and they've already previewed question 4 a little bit. So I think they'll get through it faster. They've only got, from 9 to 12 tomorrow. does that give them enough time to maybe get to those two places where those two votes really are the whole ballgame to some extent, where if you get to 9-3 on those two questions, then you're more into figuring out damage and things like that. You wouldn't think there's any way you could finish up tomorrow, but you could maybe get it to a place where, could you finish up on Monday? I don't know. Again, no prediction. I mean, you see people who've been doing this for 30 and 40 years just shake their head and they say, what just happened? Yeah. Or who saw that coming? Or, whatever. I mean, for example, yesterday, I thought Todd's attorneys kind of looked like the jurors look today. It was like, what just happened? Where are we? How is this going? How are we here?
Yeah.
So whatever they tell you when they say you never know about a jury trial, man, you never know about a jury trial.
It's true. Now, just to be clear, question 1 and 2. Question 1 was, did the NCAA make facts about Todd McNair, meaning not that they were true, just they weren't stating an opinion. They presented it like it was a fact. And before, question 2 was, were those facts presented to people other than Todd McNair? Yeah. Would they know it was about Todd McNair? And then question 3, kind of the crux of the case, did the NCAA make false statements about Todd McNair? And that's where the prior deliberations were stuck on.
And I guess the fourth is, if they were false statements, with clear and convincing evidence, can you prove that A, they knew they were false statements, or B, they had kind of a reckless disregard for whether they were or not. They just didn't care. They just threw them out there. So then you get into all of the proof involved in the emails and all the discussions and all that back and forth as to, did they have a sense of what they were saying wasn't true? In the Committee on Infractions report that was rewritten in terms of what happened, between Todd McNair and Lloyd Lake on that phone call and that kind of thing, yeah. When it happened. And they rewrote it without saying, we rewrote it, but based it on the original information in the case. And, those are, arguable questions. There is a reason when you read about defamation, very few people succeed at defamation lawsuits. If you're a public person, it's really a difficult proof. So as much as people think, man, that was false what they said, and they just didn't care because they wanted to get USC or whatever the rationale is for the NCAA, proving that is really, really, really difficult, yep. as this jury has proved.
Yep. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for day 23. A crazy day indeed. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.